So they say a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And since this technological leviathan of propaganda has already wasted our minds and created some maladaptive attitudes, well, maybe that's the wrong term, but undesirable attitudes, we should, undesirable to your soul, to Jesus Christ and so forth. So, yeah, I thought I should get back to the book read. Started on Propaganda and the Truth, and we found out how propaganda is usually factual, but sometimes they have to lie in the realm of intentions and interpretations. The problem of factuality. It is well known that veracity and exactness are important elements in advertising. The customer must be able to have confidence in the advertisement. When he has been deceived several times, oh my God, I just had a crazy thought. It's like, you know, they say you should have confidence to get girls, but what confidence represents, in my opinion, is that perfect balance of macho Captain Save-A-Ho instinct mixed with gullibility. Because if you really know what's going on around you, you wouldn't really have much confidence in yourself, at least initially. You would be freaked the fuck out, man. So, yeah, so I mean, the customer must be able to have confidence in the advertisement. So the cuck must believe that he is actually desirable to the female for who he is, not for what she's getting out of him. Anyway, when he has been deceived several times, the result is obviously unfavorable. That is why advertisers make it a rule to be accurate and organize a bureau of standards to denounce false claims. So the females, they're not very open, but with the little, they do, anyway, I don't know what I'm saying. Oh, well, that's why they have feminism, right? So they can sound accurate even while pushing propaganda, and they can denounce false claims and lock up any dissidents too. But here we refer to an essential factor, experience. The customer has good or bad experiences with a product. In political matters, however, personal experience is very rare, difficult to come by, and inconclusive. That's kind of like the problems with the incel epidemic. Since they're not, since the girls have no time for the guys, they're getting low personal experience, and therefore the Me Too bullshit is being allowed. Because we are all clueless, mostly. Thus, one must distinguish between local facts, which can be checked, and others. Obviously, propaganda, so you have to fact check everything. Obviously, propaganda must respect local facts, otherwise it would destroy itself. It cannot hold out for long against local evidence unless the population is so securely in the palm of the propagandist hand Uh, it cannot hold off for long against local evidence unless the population is so securely in the palm of the propagandist's hand that he could say absolutely anything and still be believed. But that is a rare condition. So that reminds me of like the female propagandist always plays the part of a good actress, you know, of a loving, doting girlfriend or wife, until she gets what she wants, which is the ultimate goal, which is the marriage contract, licensed to enslave. So once she enslaves you, your wallet, and your emotions, then she can start showing her true colors, because by then she has you hooked. You are securely in the palm of the propagandist's hand, so she can say absolutely anything and still be believed. With regard to larger or more remote facts that cannot be the object of direct experience, one can say that accuracy is now generally respected in propaganda. One may concede, for example, that statistics given out by the Soviets or the Americans are accurate. There is little reason to falsify statistics. Similarly, there is no good reason to launch a propaganda campaign based on unbelievable or false facts. The best example of the latter was the communist campaign on bacteriological warfare. Oh my God. That's so true. In coronavirus, we're finding out they're full of lies in their propaganda. My God, it's like a blueprint for mind control right here. Oh man, history and future. Of course, it was useful from certain points of view, and the true believers still believe what was said at the time. See all the people trying to push for the masks, even though they don't protect against the disease. They actually make it worse in some situations, and they're just a negative health thing for the vast majority. Why would you willingly decrease your oxygen level when it's already decreased from being in an artificial habitat and not in your natural jungle setting? So, yeah, I mean, basic common sense, you know? But, maybe give the mask to the people who have a cold or something so they don't sneeze on you. But no. Or people who are prone to sneezing, you know? Kick them out after they sneeze or something. Oh man, that's kind of brutal though. But among the undecided, this is talking again about the lies of propaganda, tall tales of the bacteriological revolution, which is one of the few times lies were used. Unbelievable lies and false facts. But among the undecided, which is the masses, the blind masses, it had a rather negative effect because of its extreme improbability and its contradictions. So, unfortunately, well, actually that's true today too, because most people don't like the masks, and they're kind of suspicious, even though they won't say it out for fear of Karen, or fear of death by Karen, you know, psychic death. emotional torture and humiliation and so forth, social death. So yeah, it did have a negative effect because of that. However, although many, especially in Western Europe, considered it a blunder, the campaign produced considerable credence in North Africa and India. That's so true. In India, everyone's like, wear masks, save lives. Even my, well, anyway. Yeah, I don't see that much Indian people fighting against coronavirus lockdown. But America, there's a lot. And Europe, Canada. Consequently, falsehood bearing on fact is neither entirely useless nor to be strictly avoided. Nevertheless, bear in mind that it is increasingly rare. As we have emphasized, such lies must not be told except about completely unverifiable facts. So, all the female lies they say, people fall for it because they're not females. So, for example, or maybe they're not fathers yet, and they don't see how silly the claim of authority of a mother just for birthing a child and keeping it in the body for 9 months, all the while she's getting pampered. People don't see how that's such a great accomplishment or deserves some great power over the child just for that. Because the dad is there 24/7, working much harder and dedicating his whole self to the whole project, a bigger project, should I mention. So 3 qualifications of this statement must be made. That falsehood must be used. First of all, propaganda can effectively rest on a claim that some fact is untrue, which may actually be true, but is difficult to prove. So propaganda can effectively rest on a claim that some fact is untrue, which may actually be true, but is difficult to prove. Okay, so those are those controversial opinions and so forth. The area of controversy and uncertainty, the boundaries of science, that's where a lot of propaganda is reaching for, because science kind of is in a gray area regarding God and spiritual matters, right? Even though they have said the brain has a God particle and all that stuff, which is also an attack on religion, because they're trying to say that everything comes from matter and your brain controls everything, therefore it's all in your head. Pretty much. Oh man. So therefore, people don't have the same rights if they want to have a biblical worldview. Yeah. And all these churches and Christian organizations are being destroyed in the Middle East, whereas supposedly we went there, according to Bush, to save the heathens and bring them our great values of Western civilization. But unfortunately, it's all about Pimpin' the hose. My region, Kashmir, used to be used part of the Silk Route to manage the sex traffic, the slave trade between Asia and Central Asia and South Asia, because Kashmir is a very strategic location. So, and it happens to have a lot of beautiful females. Maybe because, I don't know. Anyway, maybe because of the slave trade is what I was saying. But Central Asians have had a less civilized and controlled society for thousands of years, whereas Europe and India, for example, have been under the Leviathan powers for millennia. So the sexual freedom is not there in those civilizational areas as much. Therefore, you see the corresponding difference in beauty of the people. I don't know why Middle Eastern girls are seen as beautiful in America, but Middle Eastern guys are seen as ugly. It's a funny contradiction. I guess it started with the black people. Since mostly males were imported, black women were always seen as not as attractive, maybe. All right. Or maybe Genghis Khan was a really handsome guy, huh? I mean, that explains the differences to attractiveness. Oh man, anyway, I don't know though. In America, I think Latinos are hotter than Middle Easterners. At least there's more craze about it. So, maybe I'm just being subjective. So, Khrushchev made a specialty of this kind of operation. He denounced lies on the part of his predecessors in order to give a ring of truth to his own pronouncements. Sounds like the people who kicked me out of Toastmasters. Try to make me look like a bad guy. A misogynist. A crazy guy. Obviously, they must be speaking the truth. Or so they think. So when he called M an inveterate liar before the Central Committee of the Communist Party in December '58 and declared that M's statistics were false, there was no reason to believe K more than M, but the foray made sense. First of all, as K was denouncing a lie, it seemed that he must therefore be telling the truth. Secondly, by lowering the figures given by M, Khrushchev could show a much higher rise in production since 1952. Now, I just want to say, these are just like, these seem like too simplistic, but if you watch public opinion and news and propaganda, you'll see that all these nonsense things are being accepted as truth based on these simple propagandic techniques of mind manipulation. And that's because when people are in a group situation, they automatically think like children, which is why I always criticize groupthink, because children shouldn't be in control of the society. So by lowering the figures given by M, K could show a much higher rise in production since 52. So make himself look better. It seems more reasonable to consider M's figures accurate rather than K's, unless proved otherwise. And this was evidenced by a report, agricultural report, of their failings. A second qualification obviously concerns the presentation of facts. When these are used by propaganda, one is asked to swallow the bald fact as accurate. So, for example, the feminazis, the feministes, the femi-terrorists love to state the claim that women make 84% of what men make, or something like that. And that's called the wage gap. But they omit the fact that women are lazy as fuck and expect everything to be handed to them. And then when they get a little bit, then they want to take everything. So those things are not being explained in that so-called bald fact, which is supposed to be accurate. Also, most of the time, the fact is presented in such a fashion that the listener or reader cannot really understand it or draw any conclusions from it. So the propagandist bitch I talk about, it was so difficult to communicate with her because she was always like surrounded by her bodyguards 24/7, or she knew how to play the games to distract your head and present the facts in such a fashion that it cannot really be understood, and so you cannot draw any conclusions from it and decide your best interest, basically. Anyway, enough about bitches from the Ministry of Truth. Most of the time, okay, a figure may be given without reference to anything, without a correlation or a percentage or a ratio. So, yeah, that's what I said about no reference. For example, they won't say that men work 300% harder than women, but women still get 80% of what men make. So that kind of correlation or percentage or ratio wasn't given. Therefore, people believe the propaganda. One states, so that's an example. The lack of coherence and cohesion of such data is entirely deliberate. This type of propaganda consists in respecting detail in order to eventually compose a static whole which gives misleading information on the movement. Thus, truth becomes the principal form of falsehood. So the feministes, they push all their lies, like, for example, men are much more sexually uncontrollable than women, and so forth. So there's a lot of details, but those details lead a false conclusion and give you a total misunderstanding, which is a disadvantage for you about the situation. Hence, they reserve the right to sue you if you expose them with facts, which they carefully presented to you so as you could never prove it or even understand what was going on until later. That's why they used to stone bitches in the old days, so they couldn't cause all that chaos in society, which is what they seem to enjoy. Anywho, of course, starting with such data, it is not impossible to reconstruct the whole. Reconstruct the whole. Oh man, stop trying to chase the whole. Reconstruct the whole. With much patience, work, and research, one can bring order into such facts and relate them to each other. Damn, I feel like Dr. Evil now. I've reconstructed the whole. But that is the job for a specialist, and the results would not appear until long after the propaganda action had obtained its effect. So after they used me as a tool, then they threw me away when I got hip to the exploitation. You have to bring order into the facts and relate them to each other. But that is a job for a specialist, and the results would not appear until long after the propaganda action had obtained its effect. Like they say, hindsight is 20/20. So I'm just laughing. I'm just feeling proud about being Captain Hindsight. That's not really an accomplishment. But the crazy thing is, the bitch already knew that I would become Captain Hindsight. And she dropped the threats much earlier than I could understand what the threats were all about, even. Not to say what the actions were all about in the past. That's why the bitch is a evil mind manipulator and deserves to die. In a just society, of course. Not a just ice society. Law and order. Huh. More like walls and disorder. Inside the walls, that is. But that is a job for specialists, blah, blah, blah. Besides, they would be published as a technical study and be seen by only a handful of readers. Therefore, the publication of a true fact in its raw state is not dangerous. When it would be dangerous to let a fact be known, the modern propagandist prefers to hide it, to say nothing rather than to lie. About 1/5 of all press directives given by Goebbels between 39 and 44 were orders to keep silent on one subject or another. Soviet propaganda acts the same way. Well-known facts are simply made to disappear. Occasionally, they are discovered after much delay. So this is like the whole feminazi program. They're like many have exposed. They're cultural Marxists and communists, therefore. So they're all about hiding facts in their propaganda. Hence, when you now expose these facts, they're going so far as to call you a hater, someone who does hate speech, or even incite violence. When I said she deserves to die, I'm saying that people who play other people, which is what I think she did, maybe unconsciously, because that's how she survives, they should be given the proper punishment, so these kind of exploitative practices are not pushed in the general population and cause a lot of chaos in the general population. For example, in a physical sense, feminazis have gained a lot of victories over the average male. Yet, if you look at it from a psychological, spiritual aspect, the average male is a winner, because he has been freed from the misery of the feminasty and the femi-terrorist, who are always in collaboration, you see. Can't avoid it. Unless you find your unicorn. The famous cave report to the 12th Congress is an example. The communist press in France, Italy, and elsewhere simply did not speak of it for weeks. Similarly, the Egyptian people did not learn of the events in Hungary until May 60. Up to that time, the Egyptian press had not said one word about it. Another example is K's silence on the Chinese communes in his report to the Central Committee of the CP in DEC 1958. This is my favorite now, because this is the femi-terrorist did to my head. Silence is also one way to pervert known facts by modifying their context. So, for example, I never knew what really happened behind the scenes that got me kicked out. So I don't really know what games were played and who played them. Although my suspicions I have stated. There were admirable examples of this in the propaganda against Mendes, France. Propaganda said, MF has abandoned Indochina. MF has abandoned Tunisia. Those were the plain facts, but there was complete silence on past policies in Indochina, past events in Morocco that had led to events in Tunisia, and agreements on Indian banks signed by the preceding government. This technique, called selection by American authors, leads to an effective distortion of reality. So what the bitch tried to do, and the bitches at the club, the bitch-ass nigga squad, cracker squad, whatever, light-skinned motherfuckers, trying to act like some Illuminati motherfuckers, but they were trying to distort my reality, because I chose to attack them for doing the anti-American actions that they were promoting. And annoying me. And fucking with my head. Like a bitch. That's all a bitch can do. Leads to an effective distortion of reality. The propagandist automatically chooses the array of facts which will be favorable to him and distorts them by using them out of context. Indeed. Finally, there is a use of accurate facts by propaganda. Based on them, so they've talked about silence, they've talked about the presentation of facts, and asking to swallow the bald fact as accurate, and on the gray areas of the difficult to prove facts they can manipulate. Finally, there is a use of accurate facts by propaganda. Based on them, the mechanism of suggestion can work best. Americans call this technique innuendo. Facts are treated in such a fashion that they draw their listener into an irresistible sociological current. The public is left to draw obvious conclusions from a cleverly presented truth, and the great majority come to the same conclusions. So, accurate facts are given. Oh, this reminds me of the Wicker Man movie, how they gave him a lot of facts, but they gave him in such a fashion that he was drawn into an irresistible current. And they basically made him draw obvious conclusions from their cleverly presented truths. The only element in the publication of a fact which one must scrupulously take into account is its probability or credibility. Much news was suppressed during the war because it would not have been believed by the public. It would have been branded as pure propaganda. A 1942 incident is an excellent example of this. Goebbels gave the order not to reveal the fact because everybody would have considered it a lie, to explain the defeat and to prove that R had not really been beaten. Truth was not probable enough to be told. Yeah. That's what they say about conspiracy theories. You can't really talk about it in the public because it's not probable enough to be told, even though it's the truth. And females who clearly understand their truth and their propaganda, they're real hypocrites if they act offended, about the truth. And that's what they said in the Bible. Most females, in fact all females that in a certain example, none of them were good. Only 1 in 1,000 men were good. So anyway, so to obtain this result of using the facts cleverly, propaganda must be based on some truth that can be said in few words and is able to linger in the collective consciousness. This reminds me of the conversation between the first conversation between the policeman in the Wicker Man and the school teacher, who is also the high priestess of the society. And he was really getting irritated by her. And so was I by the bitch, by the way. By bitches in general. At least Toastmaster bitches. By their lack of thoroughness and using concise speech that tends to linger in the consciousness. That's because we all have instincts, and we know when somebody's lying to us, even though sometimes they're expert at using these trickeries. So the enemy cannot go against the tide, which he might do if the basis of the propaganda were a lie, or the sort of truth requiring a proof to make it stick. So when you making far out claims, you have to provide proof to make it stick. I guess that's why the bitches be trying to get me in serious trouble wherever I go, so they can make it stick. They showed me. They stuck it to the man. Oh man. On the contrary, the enemy must now provide proof, but it no longer changes the conclusions that the propagandee already had drawn from the suggestions. That's kind of confusing. Alright, so that's the end of the video. I didn't really understand the last part. Maybe you do. So they can't go against the tide of the few word truth that lingers in the consciousness. The enemy must now provide proof. But it no longer changes the conclusions that the propagandee already has drawn from these suggestions. Oh, okay, so the proof is just there, but it doesn't impact the facts that they cleverly presented. Alright, so next one is intentions and interpretations. And it goes on.